I have incredible audio to play for you. It came through a Twitter account last night, and I'm gonna play Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden when he was still in the United States Senate.
Driving home, my staff, who lives here in the Hill, reminded me, don't stop at a stoplight until I'm out of town. If I see a red light late at night, since there's very little traffic, slow up at the other block so I never come to a full stop except in the middle of the block because of carjackings. Stopping at a light, people standing in a corner, walking up with a gun.
That's Joe Biden talking about working in Washington, D.C. Now, this was back during the 90s and the crack epidemic, and it's wild to me the number of Democrats who are saying and continuing to say, by the way, notice I saved the crime issue, which we've spent a lot of time on for the third hour here, but it's wild to me that they're trying to say, well, it's not as bad as the crack epidemic. It's still bad, and people who live in Washington, D.C. know that it's bad. Eric Swalwell, 2 years ago, I think it was, he put up a tweet on how he and his wife practice carjackings. That if they were carjacked, they don't practice doing the carjacks. They practice if they were carjacked, how they would go through the back seat to try to get their kids out of the car, getting their seatbelt off, sliding through the back seat to get their kids on the way out of the car, that they practice the maneuver to be able to do it. He literally said he practiced how to get out of his car if he's carjacked and is now like, there's not a crime problem in D.C. In 2016, when Hillary Clinton was calling for gun control reform, she used violence in D.C. as an example, and she cited the death of Seth Rich, the employee of the Democratic National Committee who was murdered. The ghouls of the conspiracy theorists turned his murder into something it wasn't. It is that Seth Rich. And she cited his murder in Washington, D.C. as proof that crime is out of control, and she blamed the guns, not the people. Now she says Donald Trump's takeover is there's no crime problem in D.C. There was a what's his name, Bueller, Brian. He's a political activist on the left on Blue Sky. A couple years ago was nearly murdered. He was shot and nearly killed as someone in D.C. tried to steal his iPhone from him, or successfully stole his iPhone from him. And he's now mocking conservative criticisms about crime in Washington, D.C. It's wild to me, these people who have all either been directly or indirectly victims of crimes who are on the left because Donald Trump says it's bad. They're like, no, there's no problem at all. It's insanity. Anna Garitelli, the Washington Examiner. 5 years ago, I was violently attacked and sexually assaulted in broad daylight in Washington, D.C. by a homeless man. Today, he is in federal prison for what he did to me. But if you look for evidence that the attack happened in the city's crime statistics, you won't find it. The truth of what happened to me and the D.C. government's role in it is as much a public scandal as is the personal trauma. D.C. police covered up the unmistakable wrong that the stranger did to me. Even though a judge sentenced my attacker to hard time in prison, D.C. police leadership would rather deceive the public and appear less dangerous than list mine and countless other sexual assaults on their website. The extent of crime in D.C. has been debated by the left and the right since President Donald Trump announced on Monday he would take federal action to crack down on problems in the District of Columbia. But the public wants to have an honest conversation about crime in D.C., and the Metropolitan Police Department will first have to be honest about how prevalent crime is. Without their honesty about the crimes it's chosen to hide from its public-facing stats page, the White House can't get an accurate picture of how bad the problem actually is and adequately fix it. So this is a sexual assault victim in Washington, D.C., that the Washington Police Department got rid of her assault in the data. Now there's this from Elena Goodman at the Washington Free Beacon. It hit today. It landed this morning. The District of Columbia has quietly settled a lawsuit from a sergeant who accused Metropolitan Police Department leaders of misclassifying offenses to deflate the district's crime statistics, court records obtained by the Washington Free Beacon show. Police brass repeatedly told officers to downgrade theft cases, knife attacks, and violent assaults to lesser offenses according to emails, depositions, and phone call transcripts the Free Beacon has reviewed. Former Metropolitan Police Department Sergeant Charlotte Jousseau sued the department in 2020, alleging that police leadership punished her for speaking out against the scheme. Jusso, who joined the force after serving honorably in Iraq, accused MPD brass of attempting to distort crime statistics by downgrading a number of felonies to misdemeanors so that there will be fewer felonies in the statistics. She also provided records showing that police leaders explicitly instructed their subordinates to unclassify certain instances of theft to keep them out of the crime stats the city reports to the public. Now, this is what we keep hearing from Democrats, that the statistics. Here is a lawsuit that is based on emails, depositions, and phone call transcripts that shows that the police in the District of Columbia have downplayed the crime. You know what's so interesting in all of this is that you talk to the residents of Washington, D.C., not the Peter Bakers of the world of the New York Times who live in the area but not in D.C., talk to the Anthony Coleys of the world, also of MSNBC, who lives in D.C. and complains about the crime on TV. Talk to the residents of Washington, D.C. They complain about the crime. They don't like the crime. They don't feel safe in their homes. And you know what the Democrats could have done? The Democrats could have said, you know what? Crime really is a problem in Washington, but we disagree with how Donald Trump presumes to solve the problem. We disagree with how Donald Trump thinks the law enforcement should be structured. Here's the problem, though. They can't do that because the reason crime is so bad in Washington is because the Democrats implemented the policies the Democrats prefer. In Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney, can't prosecute youths as criminals. Can't prosecute them. If they commit a gun crime, the U.S. attorney, is not allowed to prosecute them. It is the district attorney, who is a giant progressive activist, who prosecutes them. And what does he do? He sends them to youth deferral programs that include yoga. I'm not making that up. He sends them to yoga class. So you say that carjackings are not bad and that youth can't be prosecuted for carjackings. Guess what? Carjackings in D.C. have exploded, and it's mostly people under the age of 17 doing the carjackings. Why? Because they can't go to prison for carjacking in D.C. When you in-cash bail and just let people out of jail instead of waiting for their trial, guess what? Those are the people who do most of the crimes. In fact, there are statistics in D.C., this will blow your mind, like 600 people in Washington, D.C. are responsible for most of the crimes. The Atlantic, of all places, The Atlantic, a liberal publication, actually has a piece he ran late yesterday about the problems in D.C. The Atlantic, and actually they admit crime actually is a problem in D.C. And what they say is that what Donald Trump should do instead of doing what he's doing is target the 600 repeat offenders. Crime would drop remarkably well in Washington if you targeted those 600. The problem is that, well, they're under 17, most of them. And District of Columbia laws are restrictive in what you can do. The president needs to be able to go after them. But, this is a problem of progressive leadership. This is why they're screaming, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump, but Trump. That they can't actually say, yes, crime is bad. We just want to handle it a different way because D.C. is handling it the way the Democrats want to handle it, and it's not good. Ending cash bail, bad. Not prosecuting juveniles, bad. Allowing homeless encampments all over the city, bad. Turning a blind eye to drug crimes, bad. Downgrading serious crimes to minor offenses, bad. All of the things the Democrats wish to do to fight crime are turning out not to work. And the number one thing the Democrats have been doing to fight crime is to vilify the police officers. The police officers are the bad guys. Time and time and time again, they say it's the police officers who are bad. There are bad police officers, but the police generally are not bad. Simone Sanders is the talking head at the DNC. She was, Joe Biden's press secretary for a while? And she's out there attacking Donald Trump for Donald Trump's statements on crime. It's actually kind of funny to see her tweet. She's attacking Donald Trump, saying essentially, propaganda will have you believing people who've never set foot in your community over your own eyes and ears. So in other words, it's propaganda complaining about the crime. And it actually turns out that her husband testified in a committee in Washington, D.C., that crime is so bad in Washington, D.C., that it's driven businesses out of the community. So this woman who was a comms person for Joe Biden is saying it's propaganda to say there's crime in D.C. Her husband has testified in a city setting that crime has been so bad it's chased businesses out of the city. So which is it? Do we believe her, the Democratic flack, or her husband, who's a business owner in Washington, D.C.? Who do we believe? I suspect we believe him. And then you got all the white people out there complaining. Did you know it's a rent-a-mob? There's actually a company, I talked about it yesterday, that you can actually rent activists to protest. There was a guy, somebody took his picture last night, was protesting the cops in D.C. and literally wearing a T-shirt that says, "I love trans and I love trains," or something like that. He loves trans and trains. Wow. Ladies, does that make you hot? You got a guy out there who says he loves the trans and he loves the trains. It's just anti-fascist pablum. It means nothing. These are the talking points du jour of the Democrats, that they are for whatever Donald Trump is against. And the remarkable thing here is they're starting to get it. They're starting to realize that Donald Trump has them on the 20% side of an 80-20 issue. Even on MSNBC, I don't have the clip immediately available, but Chris Matthews returned to Morning Joe. He's telling Mika Brzezinski, it's a trap, it's a trap. Donald Trump has Democrats not out saying crime is a problem, but that crime is not a problem when people know it is. And it makes the Democrats look completely out of touch. And he's not wrong. It does. But they can't help themselves. They can't help themselves. The Democrats are defining themselves in opposition to Donald Trump, and they've made it very, very easy for Donald Trump to get them on the wrong side of a bunch of issues. Joe Biden in the U.S. Senate. Crime was so bad that if the light turned red ahead of him, he slowed down to a crawl and kept his car moving slowly just to avoid, between intersections late at night, just to avoid getting carjacked. Carjackings are on the rise in D.C. by people under 17 because they can't be prosecuted in the District of Columbia and sent to jail the way they should, and they keep doing it over and over and over and over. And the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. The Democrats have gone insane.